What is up, my Bodyweight warriors, and welcome back to another video. Today I've got a probably pretty useful video for a lot of people out there, especially if you're interested in the bodyweight strength skills, that side of things. Elbows are definitely a point of contention, something I've certainly suffered with. I talked about that in my 8-year transformation journey, the one I posted recently, and the fact that I was out for almost an entire year out of my whole time training because of an elbow injury. I wanted to basically make a video covering some useful advice when it comes to conditioning and making sure the elbows are strong. So I've done a video on this covering training the knees, and I thought logically it would make sense to do the same sort of video covering the elbows, which is what we're going to go over in today's video. We're going to take a quick look at the structure of the elbow, the things that we need to actually condition and train. Then I'm going to share with you 3 different movements that are going to hit all the different areas that we need to hit, as well as some tips for your own training and setting things up and designing programs to make sure you're trying to keep and do everything you can do to make those elbows healthy. So when it comes to the structures, what exactly do we need to strengthen? So there's 2 main groups of muscles that we need to consider when it comes to the elbow. We've got the elbow flexors and the elbow extensors. So for the elbow flexors, it's going to be primarily made up of the biceps. This is going to be the bicep brachii, the brachioradialis, and also the brachialis. These are going to be primarily responsible for that elbow flexion, but there is also going to be to some degree the use of the pronator teres, which is in the forearm, as well as other load of small muscles that are in the forearm, but we're not going to go into detail naming all of those in particular. For the elbow extensors, we're going to be looking at essentially the triceps, but also we're going to consider the anconeus, which is a small muscle on the outside of the elbow, which again plays a similar role to that pronator teres. As I said, there are many more muscles involved. You can't really isolate things as such down to the muscles in particular, but you know, these sort of things are useful to know when we're talking about training. As I said, I'm going to give you 3 exercises which I think cover all of these grounds quite nicely and prepare you for future moves. Because at the end of the day, there are no dangerous movements. There is just a dangerous lack of preparedness. And that's kind of where injuries and other things arise. But before we jump into that, I want to give you a couple of good, useful tips for just generally applying to your training that is going to help strengthen your elbows. At the end of the day, we're going to use our elbows in pretty much all of our upper body workouts. At least I hope so, doing various different movements. And to be honest, the elbows and the structures around them, the biceps, the triceps, should be conditioned when we're doing our training, if our training is well structured and well thought out. There is a couple of rules that I would follow to make sure that this is the case. Number 1 is ensuring that we're covering all angles of both pushing and pulling. So this is going to mean primarily we're focusing on the vertical and also the horizontal pressing and pulling movements. So this is going to be things for the vertical, like handstand push-ups and pull-ups. For the horizontal, it's going to be things like the planche push-up, normal push-ups, dips, and also rows. Having a good balance of all of these is going to ensure that we're training both the triceps and the biceps in all of their ranges of motion, so both shoulder flexion, extension, etc. The second option is also ensuring that we're using lots of different grip positions when we're performing pulling movements. Depending on if our hand is supinated, pronated, or neutral, is going to change the leverage on the muscles, so making sure that we're training a variety of these pulling patterns is going to ensure that we're training those muscles adequately rather than just abusing one particular format. Now this can be done in a session, but it's best done in sort of a mesocycle layout. So for example, one phase, 4 weeks of a program, we might do pull-ups. The next phase, we might do chin-ups. That means we're doing some pronated and some supinated work. All of that looks good. Now, I'm sure you're thinking, what else can I do? And that's kind of why you're watching this video. So let me share with you 3 of my personal favorite drills. Now this isn't necessarily about novelty, this isn't about introducing something new, this is about talking about things that work. So you probably have seen these exercises before, but hopefully the context and the reasons why we're doing things is what matters. So first of all, let's look at the biceps. And there's going to be 2 exercises I'm going to recommend for the biceps because we need to consider both bent arm and straight arm strength. So straight arm is going to cover things like the planche, the press to handstand, and the back lever, all of which the bicep plays a crucial role in stabilizing and helping the shoulder move. Part of the reason why you see gymnasts which have massive biceps is because they have such good conditioning in their straight arm work, doing stuff on the rings and for other skills that they have to do. So first of all, let's think bent arm, because bent arm is nice and simple. For this one, I'm going to recommend to you a hammer curl. Hammer curl is just a standard bodybuilding exercise, but how we're going to perform it and why we're going to perform it is what is important. The hammer curl is nice because it gets trained in a neutral grip. Now this neutral grip helps us to contract and focus a little bit more on the brachialis and then also the pronator teres as well. As we pronate the hand more, and move from supination into pronation, this is going to reduce the leverage that our biceps have, which is why, for example, pull-ups are harder than chin-ups. They are also pretty important at stabilizing the elbow in pressing movements with an eccentric contraction as well. Making sure both of these muscles are strong is going to be fundamental for ensuring that our elbows remain solid. The way I particularly like to perform these hammer curls is slow and heavy, using a tempo of like 3 to 4 seconds for both the concentric and the eccentric portion of the movement allows really nicely to focus both the forearm and the bicep structure. Doing this for somewhere between 5 to 8 reps allows us to go nice and heavy and do all of that good conditioning around the elbow to assist with our pulling movements. But I also think it's a fantastic prep drill for the one arm chin up as well. We can also perform this movement as a bodyweight version of by using rings and performing a ring bicep curl, but maintaining those hands in a neutral hand placement. I quite like this drill a lot for people who have suffered or are suffering potentially with golfer's elbow. You might want to go as heavy. You're probably going to want to play this one with your pain, but it can work quite nicely at doing some form of elbow flexing that isn't going to bother your elbow in those injured areas. Next, we have straight arm work. So for this one, we're going to focus on an accessory movement, and that is going to be a German hang pull. Now, I've done a whole video covering the German hang, so I'm just going to link to that one. This is one going to challenge the straight arm strength, but it's also going to do it in shoulder extension, which is going to require some flexibility of the shoulders. But that is also partly the focus of why we're doing this drill. A couple of keys to consider when performing this exercise is that when we're lowering, when we're doing the movement, we want to make sure that our arms are actively locked out. So we're contracting both the bicep and the tricep to stabilize the elbow. And we want to supinate our hands. We want to have our hands facing down towards the floor. When you lower into this one, you're simply going to lower as far as you can comfortably control. If this is heavy initially, you can do it so that you can have your feet on the ground to assist in that lowering portion. I like to add in some pauses in that final stretch position at the top. Again, being active, not just hanging out on the joints, but actively contracting the biceps, keeping that active straight position. An alternative for this one can also be done lying down on a bench and performing it using light dumbbells. And this actually reverses the strength curve, so it changes when the movement is going to be harder. It's another nice, useful drill that is very similar depending on what you personally prefer to do. Finally, we have the triceps, and for this one, we're going to use a good old-fashioned dumbbell tricep extension. This one just works really nice. It's nice and simple, but there is a twist, quite literally, that we're going to add to it to make some more bang for your buck out of the exercise. And that is by performing a pronating tricep extension. So this is when we transition from a pronated grip, we lower down into a neutral grip, and as we raise back up, we change back into that pronated grip. What this does is it helps to bring in more of that anchineus in terms of its stabilization and also eccentric contractions of things like the pronated teres and other forearm muscles. Again, it does change the drill quite a bit, and just like the hammer curl, I do like this drill for people who have suffered or are suffering with, golfers and tennis elbow. It seems to hit a lot of those areas that just need to be addressed. This can be loaded heavy or light, but I actually prefer loading this one a little bit lighter, doing it for some higher reps, like 10 to 15 reps with a reasonable tempo. But that is basically it. That is kind of my recommendations, not necessarily of like adding lots of variability, but just sharing with you guys exercises that work. There's many different ways to skin this cat, but as I said, these are ones that I particularly like in their relation and their reference to body weight specific training. But this is just my opinion. What's your opinion? Have you got some exercises that you particularly like to use to keep your elbow stronger and healthier? Please let me know and let everyone else know in the comments section down below. Leave a comment down there. If you just enjoyed this video, you can hit that thumbs up button and support the channel. I'd highly appreciate it. Right next to it, you can hit that subscribe button and join the Bodyweight Warrior Tribe if you haven't already, as we're now over 500,000 strong. And then finally, if you find these videos helpful and you want to support me making future content and making better content, you can support me on Patreon as well. That is linked down below. But that has basically been it for this week, guys. I will catch you in the next episode. Have a strong week and peace.